Hello children, let me welcome you to the virtual class of the Brihan Mumbai Mahanagar Palika. My name is Shraddha teacher. Children, we are in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, and because of that we are not able to go to school, but that doesn't mean we are going to stop learning. So we are going to do many lessons which are very interesting from your textbook through the virtual class here. So let us do a lesson in English today. So children, let us start another interesting lesson in standard 8th. Subject is English, and now this subject or this lesson has got something to do with the image that you can see on your screen here. So what can you see on your screen? You can see the picture of a leaf. Okay, so there is a story which is associated with this particular leaf that we are going to see, and this story is a very emotional story, and it is a story about human feelings. It is a story about the love between two friends. It is a story about kindness, okay, compassion. So there are a lot of beautiful emotions that you will get to see in this particular story. So the lesson is lesson number 3.3 from your English textbook, and the name of the lesson is The Last Leaf. Now, before I start with the lesson, I would request you to please open your English textbooks and come to page number 66 so that you can follow the lesson along with me, and also you can attempt to solve certain exercises on your own. So like I told you, this is a very beautiful story. So but before we go to the story and before we see the contents of the lesson, we always talk about certain exercises in the warming up part. Now this lesson is about a girl who gets very sick and how she happens to recover. And a miracle happens, and this miracle is brought about by a person. Okay, and then we will see that towards the end of the story, the sick girl, she becomes healthy and she revives. Alright, so there is a little bit of talk about sickness and health in the story. So our first exercise in the warming up part has also got to do with sickness. So this is our first exercise. Suppose you suffer from a long-term illness. So what is a long-term illness, children? Where you are not well for 1 or 2 weeks. Now sometimes we get cold and sometimes we suffer from minor fever, etc. So those are not long-term illnesses. That is just when you are unwell for a few days and then you immediately become okay also. But here, suppose you suffer from a long-term illness, and what should you do and what should you avoid? So you're supposed to fill up the table of do's and don'ts over here. Now children, when we fall sick, it is necessary that we not only try to take care of our bodies, but we also try to keep our mind in control. Because if we are happy, if we try to keep our mind stable, if we try to not bring negative thoughts into our mind, then physically also we will recover very soon. So that is why there is this particular exercise where you're supposed to think if you fall sick and if you are not recovering for a pretty long time, what are the things that you should do and you should not do. So I will leave you with around 2 minutes where you can think about the answers, and then you can wait and check your answers with mine. Okay, so come on, let's see what are the things which you should do. So the first thing that you should do is you should go to a doctor for diagnosis. Now we all have Google at our disposal. We can go onto the internet and we can check so many things, but remember, going to a doctor for diagnosis is extremely important. You cannot look at Google and treat yourself. Then what will you do? You should follow the doctor's advice. It is not that you're just going to the doctor and he tells you certain things and you say, Arey, this is not necessary, I will not do this. No, you have to follow the doctor's advice also. You have to take a suitable diet when you're not well. Alright? Then you should take your medicines on time. So whatever medicines the doctor gives you, that you're supposed to take on time, and you are supposed to rest in a properly ventilated room where you get enough fresh air so that your body recovers early. Along with that, like I told you, you should try to control your mind also. You should have cheerful thoughts, you should be courageous, and you should have a positive attitude. So these are the different things that you're supposed to do when you are not well. There are certain things which you shouldn't do, which you should try to avoid doing. So what are they? So the first one, do not self-medicate. I just told you, do not go on to Google and check, because the things which are put up on Google, no one is checking whether it is right or wrong. So do not self-medicate. Do not try to give medicines to yourself, okay, without consulting a doctor. Sometimes what happens is we hear our friends who have fallen sick. Arey, my friend had fever and she took this medicine, so let me also take it. It might not work on you because your disease might be different and your friend's problem might be different. So do not self-medicate. Do not avoid medication on time. So you should always have your medicines on time. You should always avoid outside food when you are not well. This is also very important. And nowadays, during the time where this COVID pandemic is still around, we should definitely try and avoid outside food. Avoid physical stress and exertion. You should also not expose yourself to infections. You should not go to crowded places. You should not go to places where you feel that you might become more sick. And finally, we should not lose hope and faith. So you should keep telling yourself that this is just a passing phase and I'm going to be very well healthy. Very soon I'll be very healthy and I will be well and I will be up and about doing all the work which I used to do. Okay, so this is the points which I have given you. So you might have some other points also if you think about it deeply. So you can write your own answers also. Alright, so this was exercise number 1 from your warming up part. If you look at exercise number 2, it is a vocabulary exercise where we are supposed to talk about a concept in English vocabulary called as homographs. But before we go to homographs, we know what are homophones. We have already learned what are homophones. So let us quickly see what homophones are. Then when we learn homographs, you will be able to point out the difference accurately. So what are homophones, children? Words that sound the same, but they have different meanings and different spellings. So when you hear the word, when you hear two words, they sound the same to your ears. But if you check up the spellings also might be different and the meanings are also different. Let us look at certain examples here. So see, flour and flour. So one flour is the atta that we call it. Okay, when a grain is powdered, you get flour. And then you have flower, which is a fool, we say. Rose, lily, jasmine, etc. So see, they have the same sound, isn't it? But they have different meanings also and they have different spellings also. So this is an example of homophones. Let's look at one more example. See here, pear and pear. So the first one is a fruit, which is green in color, extremely soft and tasty. The other one is pair, means a jodi. So here you have a pair of socks, you can have a pair of gloves. Okay, so this is one more example of homophones. Let me show you one more. See, night and night. So one night is night time, after day you have night, and the other night is during the ancient times soldiers were called as knights. Okay, the king's guards, king's soldiers were called as knight. So these are certain examples of homophones. Now let us compare homophones and homographs and let us try to see how they are different from each other. So now let's see what the meaning of homograph is. Now the common part of the word is homo. So there it was homophone. Phone means sound, same sound. Here homograph, graph means something which you write. So here homo means the same, but graph means something which is written. Okay, so what is the meaning of homograph then? Homographs are words that have the same spelling. That means they are written in the same way, but they have different meanings. Sometimes they are also pronounced differently. They're also said differently sometimes. Okay, so these are the words which are written in the same way, that is, they have the same spelling, but they could have different meanings and different pronunciations as well. So that is what a homograph is. Now when you compare it with a homophone, I'm sure you are able to arrive at the idea that how they are exactly different from each other. Let us look at certain examples of homographs now. So see the first one, bow and bow. So here the pronunciation is slightly different. When you bow, that is when you bow down in front of elders, when you bow down in front of kings or queens, okay, that is bow, B-O-W. The other one is like when you tie a bow around your neck, that is a bow. Spelling is the same, meaning is different, pronunciation is slightly different. Okay, look at the next one. Again, spelling is the same, meaning is different, and pronunciation is again slightly different. So the first one is tear. That is when you pull out the page of a book, you say, I'm tearing the book. And the other one is tear. The drops of water which come out of your eyes when you are sad, when you're weeping, is called as tear. So you have tear and you have tear. Look at the next one. Here the pronunciations are the same. So you have a row and you have a row. So the first one, R-O-W, row, is when you row a boat. And the other one is a line. That is, the houses are in a row. That is, the houses are in a line. Okay, so here you will see spellings are same, meanings are different, but the pronunciations are the same. Last example here on the screen for you, scale and scale. So scale, the first one is when you weigh yourself. So you have a weighing scale. And the other one is when you scale heights, when you climb mountains. What do you say? He scaled those mountains. So scale here is another word for climbing. Alright children, so these are homographs. Now we have two exercises based on homographs. One is here itself in the warming up part, and there is another exercise in the English workshop part. But we will do both of them together. Usually the exercises from the English workshop part, we do it after we discuss the contents of the lesson. But here, since they are related, let us do it one after another. So let's go to the exercise in the warming up part. So now we already know that homophones are what? They are pairs of words that sound the same, but they are different in spelling. And they are homographs, are words which have the same spelling and pronunciation, but they might have different meanings. For example, look at the example in the textbook. This is from the textbook, okay? A bat. Now a bat can be a bird also, and a bat can be a sports equipment too. So these are called as homographs. So now we know what the meaning of a homophone is and what the meaning of a homograph is. Now look at the exercise. Make pairs of sentences of your own to point out the different meanings of the following homographs. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to make two sentences. Like for example, the first word is fine. So you're supposed to make two sentences with fine, where in sentence number 1 the meaning of fine is different, and in sentence number 2 the meaning of fine is different. But what I have done is, because of lack of space here, I have clubbed both the sentences together. But when you do the exercise, what will you do? You can also do it the way I will do it, or I will show it to you now, or you can write two separate sentences also. So I will do half of the exercise and the remaining half I will leave it for you as assignment. So let us go to the first word, fine, and let us try and see how I make a sentence using fine with two different meanings. So see here, the police charged a heavy fine, but it was fine. Here there are two fines here, heavy fine and was fine, but the meanings are totally different from each other. So the first one, the police charged a heavy fine. Here fine means a fee which you have to pay in cash, okay, because you have broken some rule. So that is fine. It is like a kind of a punishment. The other fine is okay. So you might have committed a grave mistake, a big mistake, and the police charged a fine, but then it was okay for you. So hope you're getting my point. So you can also make two different sentences here to bring out the differences, okay? You can do it that way also, or you can do it the way I have done here. Look at word number 2, wave. So come on, before we go to the sentence which I have framed, think about the various meanings that you could have for the word wave. So wave could be used as a wave as in a sea wave, or wave could also be the action where you wave out to someone. Alright, so come on, see how I have used it in this sentence. My friend who was standing in the waves waved to me. So can you imagine the scene in your mind where one of my friends, I have gone to the seashore and there is a friend of mine who's standing in the water, in the waves, and that person is waving to me. So see how I have used wave in two different ways. Next word, bear. So let's look at the sentence and try to guess the meaning of the two bears here. So the bear could not bear the weight of the tree which fell on him. Poor bear, isn't it? In this, the first bear is an animal and the second bear means tolerate, could not stand. So the bear, there is a bear, on him a tree has fallen and the bear could not bear the weight of the tree which fell on him. Okay, the next one, I think you will find it very simple. Rose. So we know the two meanings of rose, not very difficult. One rose is a flower and the other rose is when someone gets up or rises up. Okay, so you can also say when the sun rises, so that is also rose. So look at this example sentence. The priest rose from his seat and people showered roses on him. Right? So see, I have used rose in two different ways. The remaining words, lead, match, second, object, these are for you to do. So think, how can you use L-E-A-D, the word lead? There is also another word which is said a little differently, that is led, L-E-A-D, led. So one L-E-A-D, lead, means it is to lead someone, okay, or to guide someone, and the other word lead is a kind of a mineral with which pencil is made. So think, use your imagination. How can you use these two words in the same sentence or in two different sentences? Using them in the same sentence requires a little bit more thinking, okay? So try to do both of these exercises. Try it in both the ways. Then you have match, then you have second and object. Alright, so this I'm leaving it to you. You can try both these ways of doing it. Now let us come to the exercise about homographs in the English workshop part. So make pairs of sentences to show the difference between the meanings of the following homographs from the story. Now the only difference between the previous exercise and this one is, here we have picked up words which are from the story. That is why I told you now that they are closely related, so let us do them together. So come on, pause the video and try to find out answers to this exercise and then check your answers with mine. Now children, these are all subjective exercises. I might make one sentence, you might make another sentence. That doesn't mean that I am right and you are wrong. Okay, both of us could be right. So the first one, interest. So see the sentences which I have framed. They shared the same interest. The rate of interest is very high. Next word, well. Sue looked after her well. She is not going to get well. Okay, next one. There are only 5 left now. The road is on my left. Just. He just kept looking out of the door. Ashoka was a just king. Mind? I do not mind eating this. She has a sharp mind. So you see, this is how the words are used with different meanings. Think whether there could be another meaning also to these words. For example, look at the second word, well. There is another meaning, well, which means a place from which you draw water. So try to use one sentence in that way. Alright? So this is the next exercise based on homographs. Now we will move on and we will see what the story is about. Now children, this is a rather long story and we also have a lot of exercises with it. So I will be putting up the second part of this lesson in the next video. So we will do the first half of the lesson here today in this particular video. So what is the name of our lesson, children? It is The Last Leaf. And the person who's written the story is O. Henry. Now O. Henry is his pen name. It is not his real name. So come on, let's know a little bit more about the author. So what is his real name? It is William Sidney Potter. Now you will learn a few more stories about the same author when you go to the 9th standard and the 10th standard also. So O. Henry was his pen name. Now he was born in 1862 and he passed away at the age of 47 in 1910. He was an American, okay, by birth. And you will see that because of some unfortunate incidents, he was working as a bookkeeper, that is as an accountant, but because of some wrong reasons, he had to go to jail also for 5 years. So he has served a 5-year sentence of imprisonment due to some wrong charges. Alright? And he's written about 600 short stories. So that is a lot of work, children. He's written close to 600 short stories. So this is about our author for today, that is O. Henry or William Sidney Potter. Now we will look at the story with a lot of pictures, but remember, I will not be able to read out the entire story for you. So we will be doing the main points in the story. I suggest that after we do the story, you stop the video or pause it and you read the textbook properly. Okay? So the story is set in this place, which is a poor part of New York City. Now America is a rich country, but that doesn't mean that all the people there are rich. There are certain poor areas or poor colonies also in New York, in America. So there's this particular city in New York, and there was a poor side to New York also, a place where the poor people of New York used to live. Now in this place they had a colony where many struggling artists used to live. Struggling artist means there are many painters, there are many dancers, okay, there are many people who write, but unfortunately all of them do not become famous. A handful of them become famous, the others have to struggle to meet their ends. Okay, they might be very talented, they might be more talented than the ones who have become famous, but that is some part of luck is also involved here. So there were many artists who were struggling artists who were working hard to make both ends meet, and these people were also living in a colony in this part of New York City. Among these artists there were 2 girls called Sue and Johnsy. Now these 2 girls, they were living in the same flat. Okay, that is they were roommates and they were trying to run a small studio in order to fulfill their daily needs, and they were both artists. Now this Johnsy, she was very small, she was very thin, and she was not very strong. So after she spent some days in New York, she fell sick. So see, Sue and Johnsy, they were two young artists who shared a very small flat. And after staying in New York for some time, Johnsy fell very seriously ill. And what was the disease that she had? She had pneumonia. So now pneumonia is an infection where your lungs are infected. Okay? Now pneumonia, as of today, it is easy to cure. It is not a life-threatening disease if you cure it on time. But remember children, we are talking about old times here. Okay? When the story was written. At that time, we did not have cure for many common diseases which we find today. Now her friend Sue, she became very, very worried and she called the doctor, and the doctor told Sue that Johnsy is in a negative state of mind and she is fed up of struggling as an artist, okay, and she is not going to get well if she doesn't want to live. So he said that medicines alone are not going to help her. She will also have to develop a positive thinking. So this is what this advice was given by the doctor to Sue about Johnsy. Now Johnsy tried her best to look after Sue. She used to feed her, she used to give her medicines on time, but somewhere Johnsy was always depressed. So see here, Johnsy would just lay in bed without making any sound or movement. And whenever Sue used to look at Johnsy, whenever Sue used to notice her, she saw that Johnsy would be looking out of the window and counting something again and again. Just outside the window was an ivy vine. An ivy is a kind of a plant, and a vine means which climbs, okay, onto something which needs support. Now it was climbing on the brick wall which was outside the window where Johnsy lay. So this Johnsy, she used to continuously look at this ivy plant. She kept staring at the old ivy vine which was gnarled. Gnarled means it was all twisted and decayed also at the roots. So the plant did not have much of life in it, and it was somehow climbing halfway up the wall. So in a way, consciously or unconsciously, Johnsy started comparing her own life to the ivy vine. She knew that the ivy vine was dying, so she started presuming that very soon, like the ivy vine, I will also perish. So this was a negative thoughts which used to come into Johnsy's mind. Sue asked her, "What is it, dear?" So see what Johnsy said. Johnsy said, "When the last one falls, I must go too." She said that I and the ivy vine are in the same position. Just like the ivy vine is not well and sick and it is dying, in the same way I am also dying. And what was she counting? She was counting the leaves on the ivy vine. And she said that when the last one falls, that is when the last leaf will fall, I also will die. So that is how negative Johnsy had become. You can see here in the picture, Sue was doing her level best to take care of Johnsy. She used to feed her warm food, she used to give her medicines on time, but like the doctor said, it was up to Johnsy to make up her mind and want to live. So slowly the days started passing and Sue started getting worried about Johnsy. So what did she do? She contacted an old painter called Mr. Berman, who was a painter and who lived on the ground floor. But he was a failure in art. I told you, there are many artists who are very, very talented, but most of them do not succeed. Okay, so this Mr. Berman, he was waiting all of his life to paint a masterpiece. He was a very good artist, but somehow life was not kind to him and he was a failure in his profession. So Sue told Berman about Johnsy's fancy. Fancy means Johnsy's idea, which was a crazy idea, that as soon as the last leaf falls, I will also die. So what did Mr. Berman do? We will come to know shortly. But the next night, there was a very bad storm. Winds were blowing at very high speed, and the rain was also lashing mercilessly, and the weather was very, very bad. So now Johnsy started getting worried, because she knew that the leaf on the tree, there was a last lone surviving leaf on that ivy plant, on that ivy vine, and Johnsy expected that tomorrow morning when I get up, the leaf will no longer be there on the tree, and I also will cease to exist. So she was in that frame of mind. But to her wonder, next day when it was light, Johnsy asked Sue to open the window. So Sue opened the window for Johnsy. She was startled, she was surprised and happy that the last ivy leaf, it was still there on the wall. It never fluttered or moved when the wind blew. And what was the reason? She did not know it. It was Berman's masterpiece. He had painted it there that night when the last leaf had fallen. So in the night, the last leaf had already fallen from the vine. And Mr. Berman happened to notice that. And he knew that next day morning when Johnsy gets up and she sees that this leaf is no longer there on the tree, she will also give up, and she will also have no will to continue living. So Mr. Berman, the kind soul that he was, he braved the weather. It was raining very badly, there was a lot of wind. In spite of all that, in spite of his weight, his age, he stayed out in the rain, and he painted the last leaf onto the wall. Now Johnsy was very happy, and suddenly she realized, and she said, I've been a bad girl. Something has made the last leaf stay there to show me how wicked I was. It is a sin to want to die. God has given us such a beautiful life, so it is a sin if you want to die. You should always get up and fight the circumstances. So this realization suddenly came upon Johnsy, and now she wanted to live. But unfortunately, Mr. Berman downstairs was now ill with pneumonia. He was an old person who had stayed out in the rain the entire night. He was wet, and in the morning the watchman found him lying on the floor, very sick and shivering. And after 2 days, Mr. Berman passed away, or he died in a hospital. So Mr. Berman, who was a failure as an artist, had painted his masterpiece, which had saved a life. So the last ivy leaf was Mr. Berman's masterpiece. So children, this was the story of the last leaf. Now, like I told you, we have taken up the 30-minute slot this time for doing the warming up part and the story here. So I will come to the next part of the lesson, or the English workshop part, where we will look at various exercises related to the lesson or to the story, as well as some grammar also, but that will be in the next video which I put up. So children, now you have watched the video. So after you watch the video now, you will have to complete a few simple tasks. Now you might have watched the video on your computers or your laptops or your mobile phones. Now after you watch the video, what will you do? You will please go to the description box which is given below the video. So what is the description box? See, the description box looks like this. Alright, and after you go to the description box, you will see that there are a few questions there. Now what are these questions about? These questions are about the lesson that we just learned or the video that you just watched. So what will you do? You will think back properly about the lesson and you will try and answer these questions and note down the answers in your notebook if you want. Okay? After that, we have another task waiting. You will also click on the link which you will find in the description box to fill up the Google form. So now what is the Google form, children? It is nothing but a simple form. There are a few simple questions there about the video which you just saw and also about yourself. So these are the tasks now that you will have to complete after you watch each video. So children, wasn't that a very interesting lesson? I'm sure you learnt a lot of new things in this lesson. If you have liked this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe to my video so that you will get to see all the videos which I keep posting regularly.